Welcome to the Cultivation Cast by Black Dog LED with Kevin and Noah. In this podcast series, we will cover all things related to indoor cannabis cultivation. Hey, and welcome to the Cultivation Cast with Noah and Kevin Frender. We are going to cover today some of the most interesting news we've seen come across in at least a few months. One fun thing about the cannabis industry is that it is new, evolving quickly, and things change quickly, both here in the United States as well as abroad, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the big news that's kind of on the forefront of everyone's mind in the cannabis industry is that Canada, as of yesterday, is now the second country in the world to legalize cannabis as a country for recreational or adult use. And it's going to be going very soon. Our understanding is you'll be able to buy cannabis legally at a recreational location as early as September of this year. So what we thought we'd do is kick around a little bit what that means, how interesting it is, and then talk a little bit about our recent trip up to Toronto for a trade show up there, the Lift trade show in Toronto. And then we'll talk about what we do with commercial organizations such as the LPs that function up in Canada, which are the licensed producers up there, what they call their commercial cannabis operations. So with Canada voting in and finally passing this, they've been talking about it for quite some time. I think since Trudeau was elected, it was one of the things that Trudeau was elected on. Part of his platform was legalizing Canada. It's been illegal there for a long time, just since 1923, I believe. And but they recognized that when they did polls, they were still one of the heavier user bases in the world in terms of per capita use of cannabis in that country. And they realized, why keep fighting this losing battle? I think like a lot of countries and in the U.S., a lot of states are coming around to see, and they've legalized it. So the impact of that is huge. They are the first, the second country worldwide, they're the first G7 country, of which U.S. is one of those as well, that's recreationalized cannabis. The adult use is at 21, Kevin, or 18? I think it's
19.
It's 19. So they are still limiting it, just like they do alcohol, and they're regulating it. Obviously, they'll tax it and they'll control it. And they've put together one heck of a robust system and some pretty high bars, actually, to become a licensed producer, to become a producer of cannabis on the recreational market out there. And we luckily recently had the opportunity to go out there as a group, as Black Dog, and visit the Lift trade show. It was our first trade show up in Toronto. And it gave us a chance to talk to a lot of the people that work out there in the industry. And we were even lucky enough to get invited and do a quick visit at one of the few functioning LPs that are already in operation and licensed up there under the medical standards. So when we were there, one thing we learned was that they have a much more rigorous, I would call it a vetting process to become licensed up there. In the U.S., you have to go through a lot at the state level. The feds keep their hands out of it. There's no paperwork to file with them because they don't recognize cannabis as anything legal. So you're dealing with the states, and every state has its laws, and they can be onerous. They can be difficult to get through, and sometimes licenses are actually impossible to obtain because they're limited unless you're one of the lucky few that won a lottery or had gotten in early. But in Canada, they're not necessarily limiting it by that. What they're really doing, we've seen, is put some really robust controls around it. So a simple example is this. There to pass it, and I'm dumbing this down, and I can't even say I understand the complexity of all their laws, but they have a thing where they have to grow a certain amount of cannabis, a few cycles, not just one, but I believe it's 3. Each one of those has to put cannabis through all the testing, all the controls, make sure it's meeting spec for both pesticides or anything like that, as well as molds, mildews, and pathogens. And they have to pass all that 3 times in a row. Cannot sell during that time. They can store the cannabis, but they can't sell anything. They have to pass all that and have in place a huge amount of infrastructure support, such as help call centers for customers calling in. You have to have the ability to do full recalls on product. A lot of infrastructure and procedures are put in place before they can even get their license to produce and sell out on the open market. Luckily, again, we were able to visit one of the ones that is licensed while we were out there. And the internal controls that we saw visually touring the facility were, I would say, off the charts. I mean, we've toured facilities in pretty much every state that's legal in the country at this point. And there are definitely varying degrees of complexity and how nice these facilities are set up in terms of security and controls and everything else, as far as environment as well, of course, lighting and environment. But Canada had some of the most restrictive controls we've seen in terms of getting in and out of rooms into the facility. I mean, there were many rooms. Not only did we have to go in with somebody, of course, we were being taken by a tour guide, but we had to have our own fobs that were associated with us that we could beep in and beep out of every single room in some cases, depending on the level of control for that room. So we've seen some good controls in the U.S., but never quite to that level of traceability. So it was a very interesting facility to see. What did you think, Kevin, when we visited that facility in Canada? Unfortunately, we can't say, and we protect our customers, so we're not going to say who it was, but it was one heck of a facility, and it was fun to tour. What did you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, they're just getting started up there. They haven't fully scaled up, but the scale of the planned facility is absolutely enormous, and it's fascinating to see that and see some pictures of other facilities that different than the ones that we actually got to tour. And just the scale that they're running these things at is astounding. And then, of course, beyond just the commercial facilities up in Canada with the federal legalization up there, I believe that every Canadian citizen of appropriate age is now allowed to grow their own as well. So besides getting it from one of these licensed producers, you can actually grow your own in Canada now, which, of course, I think a lot of people are going to take advantage of.
And was it that we read some of the, I would say not the provinces, but some of the areas were going to limit and restrict, they were going to restrict home growing, from my understanding.
I think it was Manitoba and Quebec were thinking of restricting home growing or at least limiting it to a single plant. But I believe everywhere else, it's, I don't know the exact plant count limit, whether it's 4 or 6 or 12 plants per person. And from our previous podcast, we were talking about a plant is not a unit of measurement. So even when you're limited to one plant, that plant can still yield an awful lot of flower if it's a large plant.
Yeah, one of our record grows with our 200, I believe, was it a 200 or 400 with a single plant? I think it was the 200 we ran. That one hit. It was a single plant with our Phytomax 2200, and I think that was one where we got over 10 ounces of yield on that test with that light, and that was a single solitary plant in a 2x2 tent. And
then the California Grow-Off last year was won by a single plant, 3.72 pounds with a single plant under our Phytomax 1000. So,
yeah, so again, a plant is not a unit of measurement for sure in that case. So everyone that can, if you're limited to one plant, don't worry, you're still going to be just fine up there north of the border. So as we're saying, that's, we had a chance to visit, we had a chance to look at that. And part of the reason we do site visits is because understanding the facilities is part of the process we go through when we're working with a commercial grow facility, whether it's here in the US or in Canada or other locations that we've been dealing with recently as well. So we thought we'd spend a little time talking about what that looks like, and just so people know what to look for if they're going to go out and engage an LED grow light company or any grow light company for that matter, and what you should be doing, what you should be looking for, the kind of questions you should be asking, and kind of the whole process from the initial engagement all the way through to light delivery, right? So obviously it starts either you're going to contact them or they're going to contact you, or you might run into a company at a trade show and you're going to start talking to them and say, great, I've got a facility, or I'm building a facility, or I'm designing a facility. I'm at some stage of a commercial facility and I need help with lighting. Now, we take the approach that we are not expert growers. We assume you're going to have an expert grower as a commercial facility, some kind of a master grower. But what we are is lighting experts. And anyone you work with lighting should be a lighting expert with a commensurate level of knowledge to call themselves a lighting expert. We will never say we are professional growers, that we're not, but we are lighting experts, and that's what we can bring to the table, and that's where we should help. So one of our jobs is to interface with you or whoever your commercial grower, your main grower is, to understand more about the facility and how they're going to grow. Because in commercial facilities with lighting, it is not a one-size-fits-all. It does have to be looked at individually. The location of the building, the material of the building, how big they're going to grow their plants and veg, how long they're going to veg, how big they're going to go into flower, how they're going to finish, are they going to scrog, are they going to go sea of green? There's so many variables you want to look at to fine-tune the lighting plan to work with that, whatever the grower is trying to accomplish. Are you looking to maximize really your grams per square foot? Are you looking to really maximize maybe your efficiencies are most important to you? Maybe you're in a location where power is extremely important, so you want to be really, really paying attention to your power use, or maybe it's cheaper. Rebates can come into play in terms of planning as well. So one of the first jobs is to really start to extract that information from our customers and say, hey, give us a floor plan. That's the place we really like to start, is just let us look at what you want to do and take a look at that floor plan, and then we'll get back to you with questions. So round one is we just want to get an idea of what type of facility. Is it multi-tier? Is it going to be a light the bench approach, a light the room approach, which we'll go into in a minute? But there's lots of different ways to set these commercial facilities up. So we try and get a plan, a digital copy of the plan, and then we spend some time looking at it and kind of measuring it and assessing it and seeing what it is. And then we'll go back and ask different questions. And Kevin could talk a little bit about the questions we might come back and ask to then get clarifications on the plan, so we understand how to combine the other information of how you're going to grow and all that with the plan that's in front of us to develop a full lighting plan.
Yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, Noah, every facility has its own independent layout and set of challenges. And so one of the first set of questions we're going to ask is, what are you looking to maximize? If you have limitations on the total power that is delivered to the facility, for example, that puts a cap on the total amount of lighting and air conditioning and everything else you can run. So we clearly would have to work within that cap. If there's no practical limit on the amount of power you can get to a facility, then the question becomes, what do you want to maximize? Are you looking to maximize yield per square foot? Are you looking to maximize yield per watt because electricity is expensive? Are you looking to maximize yield per cubic foot, for example, if real estate is really expensive for you? So depending on what exactly you are looking to maximize, and we always assume you're looking to maximize yield. If you're not looking to maximize yield and keep quality up, then you're probably not doing the best job as a grower in terms of making your facility profitable. So it's always maximizing yield, but it's maximizing yield relative to what? Is it your cost per gram that you want to minimize and maximize your yield per total input cost that you're putting in? Or do you have something like a 500 amp limit to your facility that, even if you have a warehouse that's plenty big enough, if you can only get 500 amps of service to it, you're going to want to maximize the amount of yield you can get out of those 500 amps of electricity. So ask questions like that to figure out exactly what we would need to aim for when we're laying out lighting. And then try and figure out what we can do as far as placing lights and what the appropriate lights would be to stay within all of the constraints, and come up with a lighting plan.
Yeah, so now, as Kevin said, we've got that information from them. Now we start to dig in. We've got a floor plan to work with. We'll recreate that in our software so we can do some lighting simulations. So we'll take the lighting plan they provided and all the information, Kevin said, we've just acquired from them, drop it into a diagram of our own that we can then manipulate and work on inside the constraints of their original floor plan, and then start to play with different lighting scenarios. So one of the key questions when we're extracting that information is, what is the setup? So years ago when when Black Dog LED was first formed and we used to go into kind of the early commercial grows back in the day, everything was, as we call, a light the bench approach, where you had a 4-foot wide bench of cannabis you get to from either side, and then another one with a 3-foot aisle in between. So you had bench aisle, bench aisle, bench aisle, and all this wasted space. Now, it was just the way it was done. You'd have 1,000 watts kind of over every 4x4, or maybe two of them over every 4x8, and just rows of this in big warehouse rooms where if you had one breakout, you'd lose crazy amounts of cannabis. But then again, they weren't testing for all the pesticides and all the stuff that we have now, so they get away with spraying things to keep things under control. But times have changed. So now what we see after these times have changed is what we call a light the room approach. And so what we're doing in that scenario is we're focusing more on hitting a light level that we've gotten the information from the grower during the discussions. We've understood either how they want their growing style to be, or understand if they happen to know what light level they want. If they just say, hey, we want to hit 900 over the entire canopy, great. Then we can start to work towards that, and that'd be a light the room approach, and it's much more efficient. And Kevin can explain what the real difference is between a light the room and light the bench approach and why it is more efficient.
Yeah, it basically comes down to aisleways. So in a light to bench approach where you've got fixed growing areas and fixed aisleways in between them, it really is stupid to light your aisleways with enough light to actually be able to grow plants there. So no one does it. They always put the lights over their benches. However, those fixed aisleways represent a fixed cost for you in terms of not only the real estate that it's taking up, but in addition, the amount of air conditioning and cleaning and general maintenance you have to do just to maintain that fixed aisleway. So if we can actually put the plants on movable benches, some sort of rack that you can roll around so that you can create aisleways as needed between the plants so that you can still access everything as necessary, but you can actually get away with basically having room for only one aisleway in your entire room, and then you just change where that aisleway actually is so that you can access the plants. Much more efficient use of space, and because it's so much more efficient to use of space, it makes sense now just to distribute the lights evenly throughout the room, unless there is a fixed aisleway someplace in the room. But we distribute the lights evenly throughout the room, so we give a nice even lighting level everywhere. You end up with incredibly even PPFD across the entire canopy, which actually grows your plants even better. And then this also allows us, because of the increased space efficiency of a light the room approach, we can get the total yield per square foot of your facility way up, while also taking advantage of the increased yield that you get from nice, even lighting levels in the light the room approach.
I think that's really important, Kevin, that as you pointed out, it's not just making the lights more efficient, it's making your entire facility more efficient on a per square foot basis. So now when we're working more with California organizations, which while Colorado really, our warehouse prices spiked like crazy, everyone knows, when cannabis went legal and it's pushed a lot of grows out to further out areas outside of Denver. California, the real estate is already insanely expensive before you had cannabis go rec. So it's incredibly expensive. In places like that, your yield per square foot for your entire facility is incredibly important as an operator. If you're paying really high rent and you're not utilizing and maximizing that square footage, you're losing money you could be capturing. So by doing it as Kevin was describing, we can get more plants, more benches, more growing surface, and more yields out of every single room by setting them up that way versus the old light the bench approach. So that's part of the discussion early on that we have is how are you? So we've got rooms, we've got floor plans, we understand the growing style. Now some customers come to us and say, here's our benches. They'll even be in the floor plan. And then we get to work inside of that. We might offer suggestions of how to improve it and maybe make it a little more efficient or squeeze more in there if they're interested. But a lot of people also come to us with empty rooms and say, great, how would you set it up? So this gets back to it. While we're not consultants, we're not out there setting up entire facilities, we do also help with that. If it's in the flower room in terms of configuration, we're happy to provide input, even though it's not necessarily lights, it's benches in this case, because that directly impacts how efficient the lights are going to be. And our goal is to get you a lighting package that generates the most output against the input you're putting in. So we want the lights to bring the most. So it's not just hanging the lights properly and plugging them in and turning them on. It's creating a canopy that's going to capture the most light and be most effective and efficient with that light. So now we've got kind of some of that figured out. We know how they want it set up. We've determined what their growing style is. We've got a facility diagram. Now we're going to simulate the growing room. So what we would do is then take their floor plan, lay out the benches. However, we've worked with the customer to figure that out. We lay those out, and now we put lights above them, and we'll often do one or two or even sometimes three different lighting configurations because, as Kevin was saying, we can deliver a nice even PPFD. We can get a nice lighting level across the place, but that lighting level, there is no one target. We have customers we work with that want 700 or 800 PPFD. We have customers that want 1,000. We've got customers that want up in the 1,200 and above PPFD. There are new growing styles people are using, and not that one is right or wrong. It's really more a question of what's right for you and your growing style and what you're trying to accomplish in your facility, in your location, in whatever state or country you happen to be in. And those can be different things. So we will, if we don't know exactly what they're trying to hit, we're going to deliver maybe 2 or 3 different lighting plans with different lighting densities, and that's talking about how many lights we're putting in the room. And what we do is we look at spacing them appropriately. So as we were talking about, if we want to hit a certain higher lighting density, the lights will simply be closer together on center. So instead of being on 5-foot centers, they're on 4-foot centers. And by playing with that to the inch, we can adjust and hit pretty much any PPFD the customer wants. And a key part of that is once you get above certain PPFD, you need to have a lot of light to get above that. Now you're talking about unnaturally high lighting levels that some people are using to hit these really solid grams per square foot numbers. We've been talking about grams per square foot, and our understanding is the general industry across we can't speak for Canada, but across the US, we're hearing really, in reality, if you're looking at averages over a long time, we're 40, 45, maybe 50 grams a square foot. The good players are up in the 90 and 100, and we know some guys producing up in the 140 grams a square foot range. To get up into those higher numbers, you need real lighting density. And it's good to talk a little bit about that because there are limitations to some lighting designs that manufacturers are putting together where you can't get above a certain lighting level because of the size of the fixture. Kevin, do you want to talk at all about that and why you can't get above certain lighting levels?
So there's a lot of fixtures on the market which are designed to be placed right above the tops of the plants, typically somewhere between 2 and 6 inches above the tops of the plants. So because the fixtures are designed to be placed that closely, they actually have to be basically the size of the lighting footprint they cover. So for a 4x4 foot area, you might have a fixture that's 42 inches square, for example. And that's great. It covers that area and it gives you nice even coverage, kind of like what we can do with the light the room approach. However, it is fundamentally limiting because the fixture is the size of the lighting area. You get whatever light output it gives you, and there's no way to change that. If you want to get 15-20% higher par levels in that lighting footprint, there is no way to cram more light fixture in there because it's already the size of the lighting footprint. So that's where our more compact fixtures allow us to put the lights together to the point where realistically we can deliver levels of light that will kill any plant on the planet. Not that that's our goal, but we can go anywhere from 50 ppfd up to 2,500 ppfd, just depending on what the grower wants to do.
Yeah, so there are limits to what you can do with lights, and we've tried to develop a line of lights that allows the most flexibility. Again, it's why we have 5 different sizes of lights. Generally, we do deploy the Phytomax 21000 into most commercial flower facilities, but we use smaller lights in veg or in nursery areas, or if we have restrictions on height limitations, or if there's space restrictions or weird-shaped rooms that need to be accommodated for, then we might use the smaller lights. But the goal is to be as efficient as possible and to get you the light, even if that lighting level is very high, and that's one of the things we take pride in offering is some of the most powerful, largest lights out there for that reason, because we know with cannabis, it's really a question of how much light you can bring to the game to help drive your yields. So now we deliver, at this point, what you should be getting from a lighting company that you're working with is you should get, after all this time spent with them talking about your operation, providing floor plans and going over it and spending that time, now the goal is to get something back from them that helps you. So what we would normally deliver is a packet that it contains things like a profit analysis, comparing it to whatever the incumbent technology is, whether you're looking to compare us to another LED on the market, like a basic white, passively cooled LED, or against an HPS light. What we would do is take the lighting plan. We also create a profit analysis that would show how would they stack up dollar for dollar over time, because you can look at it right now and say, well, yes, LEDs cost more than HPS, or this LED costs slightly more than that, but it's a business investment. You really need to look at least 2, 3, 4, 5 years out. We have a 5-year warranty. All rebate programs require 5 years. We generally take our profit analysis out to 4 years. We feel that's a fair, safe assumption that you can get more than 4 years out of it guaranteed, but you should be making a lot of money within those 4 years. And so you should get that kind of an analysis showing you how the numbers work long term and kind of what they're going to stake their claim on in terms of yield and what kind of lighting levels they're going to deliver and how that's going to look financially. Of course, the lighting plan, the simulations that we deliver, that's going to give you information regarding what are the lighting levels we're hitting, how much watts, how much wattage is in that particular room, what's the BTU load for cooling it, things like that. Also, of course, expected yield ranges for that room based on the lighting levels. So all that should come across to you, along with other general information you're going to want to know, such as cut sheets on the light that you're looking at, so you can go over them with your So you can go over them with your general contractor, with your electrician, and make sure that you're setting things up correctly. Also, you're going to most likely be engaged with some type of an HVAC engineer, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. So if you're communicating that with your HVAC engineer, the goal is to get the most efficient system possible set up and running, whether it's your lights, your HVAC, or anything. They all need to work in concert, and they need to be engineered to work that way. So what your lighting company should be providing you for a commercial facility is that insight, and provide you a full package after they've gone through the assessments. And then, of course, with all that stuff, they should be giving you at least a budgetary quote depending on your timeline. If your project is 6 months or a year out, they might not be able to give you a quote that's going to be good for 6 months to a year, but they should at least be able to give you a budgetary quote and say this is what you could kind of put into your pro forma and your prospectus to really see and get ready and set up your finances for your build out if that's the stage you're at. So these are all things you should expect, and it really should be a working relationship with your lighting company, a lot of back and forth to make sure you're getting the right thing. It will likely be one of the largest investments you make in a commercial build-out facility is your lighting, especially if you're going to go with any type of LED solution of quality. But the numbers are there, and they do make money in the long term. Kim, would you have anything else to add in terms of what else you should expect from a commercial lighting company in terms of what they should be delivering when you're looking to do this, or anything they should be watching out for, or pitfalls maybe?
Yeah, I am always amazed, and we get questions from customers all the time of, okay, how much area does this light cover? And we've gone over this in a previous Cultivation Cast, where realistically there is no one right answer for that. It depends on the exact style of cultivation you're using, and for example, how tall the plants are that you're growing, how thick the canopy is that you're growing. So I think it should be a big red flag if a company comes in and tells you you need this level of lights for your facility, and this is what we recommend. Or they come in and they tell you that, oh no, you need to switch growing methodologies with our lights to do exactly this. That seems to me to be a big red flag. It's not taking into account how the grower actually wants to grow, how they're used to growing. And honestly, there are a lot of different growing methodologies out there. I have seen most of them work very well in one situation or another. I don't think that there is one methodology which is necessarily better than any others. And depending on what you're trying to do with your facility, if you have constraints that might require you to use a particular growing methodology, then you should adapt your lighting for that methodology, not the other way around.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kevin. It really is that working relationship and understanding what you're doing, and having an open dialogue with your lighting company to make sure you don't miss out on any of those opportunities to work together or to really align things and adapt things. And we'll be honest, we've been to many, many grows, and I don't think there's anybody that has it all figured out. Everyone's got different things they're better at, and there's a lot of room for improvement across our entire industry. There's not one area there's not room for improvement. So it's fun to see these, and especially like the amazing setup we saw up in Canada. And one more shout out to our neighbors to the north. Congratulations on the passage of legalizing cannabis for recreational adult use, and thanks for the warm welcome. We had a great time up in Toronto for the Lift show, and look forward to coming back up there again for more trade shows. And everyone was incredibly nice and welcoming. It was a really good time up there, getting to know that city and some of the people there. So thanks for stopping by our booth if you did. So if you want to get more information about some of these topics we've covered, or even see some example floor plans or any of that, we have a lot of that available if you contact us. Most of that real commercial stuff is kept off the site, but we have great explanations on our site. And just through our site, you can contact us, either call us, or there's a contact us page, or of course reach out to us through any of our social media channels that we keep up to date with current R&D we're doing and the different things we're posting. We have another contest coming up soon about one of the R&D grows. And also very important to point out is, if you have any questions, whether you're a home grower or a commercial grower, even if you're not ready to buy a light, we are here to help. So please feel free to reach out to us, whether you're a single light grower at home or a commercial grower with 1,000 lights. We're happy to talk to you and help you out with that, and give you some specifications and give you some guidance and answer any questions you have. We have I think we're pushing probably close to 100 years of indoor gardening experience in the office at this point. So even if it's not directly light related, and even though we're not grow experts, we've seen a lot and done a lot, and we're happy to try and help in any way we can. So thanks again for listening. We do hope you enjoyed this installment of Cultivation Cast. If you have any questions or if you have any suggestions or for future topics or things you'd like to hear us cover in these talks, please send it over, send an email over to podcast@blackdogled.com. And of course, visit our site at blackdogled.com, and our social media, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, hit us up there as well. We try to keep those places active and up to date with our information. Everyone have a great day, and happy gardening.